Another round of explosions rocked Lebanon today, just a day after an attack that targeted members of Hezbollah by exploding thousands of their paging devices. Now, since last October, the terrorist group Hezbollah has launched missile strikes into northern Israel, forcing many Israelis in the north to flee their homes and raising concerns that Israel's war in Gaza could expand into a wider regional conflict. Well, today there was a second wave of explosions with walkie-talkies exploding. Another dozen plus militants were killed in this attack. What do we anticipate in the Middle East? We're nearly 1 year into this war. This is the longest war that Israel has had since its founding in 1948. And quite frankly, I don't see an end in sight. Joining me now in studio to discuss this is Carolyn Glick. She's a senior contributing editor at the Jewish News Syndicate and host of the Carolyn Glick Show on JNS. Carolyn, welcome in person here to Washington Watch.
It's great to be in your studio for the first time, Tony. Thanks for having me.
And the timing's a little better. It's not midnight.
No, exactly.
So let me start with what I just said there. You're much closer to it than I am, but I don't see an end in sight right now.
Well, I mean, I think that we have to win. You were talking in the intro about this becoming a regional war, but really it's been a regional war. It's been a seven-front war that Iran has been waging against Israel through all of its proxies in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Judea and Samaria, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and from Iran itself. So we're talking about a regional war that's been going on, and then the question just becomes how are the different fronts going to develop? So in Lebanon, we've seen a massive escalation in the missile attacks on Israel by Hezbollah over the past couple of weeks, where we've been seeing over 100 missiles shot into Israel a day. The landscape has changed over the past year in northern Israel because they've destroyed large swaths of our forests and
right.
and the homes themselves in a lot of these communities have been destroyed, so that the people have been refugees. They've been out of their homes since mid-October, and when they get back, you're going to have dozens and dozens of homes in their communities in cities like Kiryat Shmona or Metula or in the kibbutzim that just no longer exist.
So the Israeli military has neither confirmed nor denied the involvement in these pager explosions and now radio explosions today.
And also cars and computers.
A lot of things blowing up. In reading press reports, obviously anonymous sources, saying that this was a part of a initial wave of expanding military involvement into Lebanon, and that they had to act prematurely because the devices were discovered, but this was actually going to be a diversion of an invasion into Lebanon in the north. So are we that close to seeing the IDF now? I know they're moving troops to that region. Are we finished with Gaza for the most part and now moving to the north?
We're not finished with Gaza. We just buried 4 soldiers today who were killed yesterday in Gaza, one of them from where I live in my community. But no, we're not done. We're in a multi-front war. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to continue fighting in Gaza, and it's very difficult because as a maneuver force, the Israel Defense Forces is quite small. So it means that you have to scale back your operations in Gaza in order to have the forces that you need in order to carry out a conventional battle in South Lebanon. So it's very difficult. It's a lot of juggling of the forces and trying to prevent exhaustion of the forces as well and of our reservists. So it's a very difficult situation. Luckily, when you talk about previous conflicts, Israel's economy is much stronger now than it was in previous wars, so that we're able to withstand prolonged battles, but it's very difficult and it demands a massive sacrifice from the people.
I want to ask you a question. I'm going to come back. I want to play a clip of Kamala Harris, but I want to ask you something. You mentioned to me, we were together last night, and you mentioned something about Israelis, the Jewish people, over the last year, drawing from their from biblical faith.
Yes.
And you made a comment that you saw a stream of people talking about, after these explosions took place, making references to biblical occurrences.
Yes, to the rape of Dinah in Genesis 34. and that Simeon and Levi going into Shechem and taking revenge on the men for raping their sister. And it was very funny. You wouldn't have seen this in the past, but I started getting on all these WhatsApp groups and seeing on Twitter everybody writing Genesis 34 and calling this the campaign Dinah's Revenge or something.
So your point being that something's happened in Israel in the last year.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think sort of like alcoholics, they say that they have to reach rock bottom before they start a recovery process and getting back to health. And October 7th was rock bottom. I mean, what happened on October 7th, I think it was so heinous and so barbaric and sadistic that I think the immediate response, and that was interesting that it was really an immediate response, was an overwhelming return to faith.
So we're seeing this prompting the Jewish people in the Jewish state to return to God.
Yeah, very strongly. And you see that even in pop music, that the songs that everybody's are singing, they all have biblical allusions. Many of them sound more like prayers than rock songs. And a lot more open and very fervent prayer among our soldiers before they go into battle, while they're there. A lot of Torah study in Gaza going on between battles. I mean, things that were happening, but more on the margins of the IDF.
You've not seen this before.
Not to such an extent, not to in such an overwhelming way that it's not just soldiers who are from religious communities, but everybody. You have rabbis who do outreach and stuff like that, and you have more and more supposedly secular Jews wanting to wear the men, it's called laying tefillin. They're these leather straps that they put around their arms and their foreheads, and it's usually just the province of Orthodox men. And here you have boys, some of them were grown, teenagers and soldiers and young men who never even had bar mitzvahs in some cases, and they were calling up these rabbis and saying, "Can you bring me tefillin?" And so, yeah, we're seeing an extraordinary religious awakening in Israel.
Is that helping to unify the nation?
Very much. I mean, I think, there was a lot of intolerance on the left in the 10 months that preceded the invasion, where they were trying to banish Judaism from the public squares, and there was a lot of really ugly scenes going on, particularly in places like Tel Aviv. And I don't think that they could happen anymore because they made everybody angry at the time, but it wouldn't be tolerated any longer. And I think, people are realizing that, what happened on October 7th happened because we're Jewish.
Yeah.
And if we want to withstand this challenge to our survival, then we do it as Jews.
And do you think this is drawing the Jewish and the Christian population, Bible-believing population closer together?
I think so. From a Jewish perspective, I think that the less tied to God and to the Torah that a Jew feels, the more threatened they feel by people of faith who support them because of their faith. Because if the Jews don't have it, then they feel more threatened than supported. And so I think that the more fervent Israeli Jews are in our belief and attachment to our traditions and to our faith, the better we are as partners to Christians in the world who support us as well because they believe in Scripture. So I think, and are drawn to the Holy Land and to God's people. So I think, yes, I think that that's true, that the more confident you are in who you are and the more knowledgeable you are, the easier it is for you to recognize your friends and stand with them.
Well, we share the book. Mm-hmm. And
it's a good book.
It is a good book, and we are grateful because most of it was written by Jewish people, and we're grateful for that.
All of it from our perspective.
True, the Old Testament. I want to go to another topic. I want to go to a comment made by Vice President Harris, in particular about there's been weapons allocated by the Congress.
Yep.
House Speaker Mike Johnson specifically working on this, taking some real hits to fund Israel, which included weapons needed to finish the task.
Right.
Those have been held up. Play clip number 8.
But in the way that we send weapons, in the way that we interact as their ally, are there specific policy changes?
Well, Eugene, for example, one of the things that we have done that I am entirely supportive of is the pause that we've put on the 2,000-pound bombs. And so there is some leverage that we have had and used.
Okay, so that was Vice President Kamala Harris with Politico White House correspondent Eugene Daniels. They've held up weapons allocated by the Congress to use those as leverage.
Right, because, I mean, Kamala Harris has made very clear that when she says she supports Israel's right to defend itself, what she means is that she supports our ability to intercept missiles en route to Israel. And if we miss from time to time, well, you know, tough luck. But she does not support Israel defending itself by defeating its enemies. And so the weapon systems that have been held up by the administration are offensive weapon systems that you need in order to finish the job, in order to win. So you said we've never faced such a prolonged war before. We've never fought wars for so long before. And that has a lot to do with the White House's opposition to an Israeli victory, which is shocking given the stakes in this war and the nature of our enemy, Iran and its terror proxies. But that does seem to be the position of this administration.
I mean, their view is kind of, if they break into your house, you can defend yourself, but you can't keep them off your property.
No. They're not. If they're in your front yard, that's okay. It's only if they come in and start raping your wife.
Yeah, I mean, that's not allowing a nation to defend itself. No. And sometimes you actually have to go and eliminate the threat in order to secure. And America knows that. I mean, we do the same thing. I want to play another clip because as we talk about resolution, bringing a managed peace to the Middle East, you have to have a clear vision of what that looks like. I'm not sure she has that. Play clip number 7.
We have to agree that not only must we end this war, but we have to have a goal of a two-state solution, because there must be stability and peace in that region, inasmuch as what we do in our goal is to ensure that Israelis have security and Palestinians in equal measure have security, have self-determination and dignity.
Okay, Gaza was under control by the Palestinians since 2007.
2005.
Well, right, 2000. They've had that property, but they elected the Hamas in 2007, and they had total control there. That's just a little strip of land. When you're talking about a two-state solution, we're talking about literally the heart of the land of Israel, Judea and Samaria.
Right.
How does that work out?
It doesn't work out. I mean, if they could cause the kind of damage to Israel, overrun our communities, committed a one-day genocide on October 7th from within our territory, from Gaza, from that little, smidge of land that they've been sovereign in since 2005, 2007. And what would they do if they had the commanding heights that control Ben Gurion Airport, that control the eastern border of Israel to enable invasion from the east? What would they do if they were inside of Jerusalem, having control over part of the city? I mean, this is just an invitation for genocide, and because there's this myth that there are these moderate Palestinians, that they want peace with Israel, but that's what's called the Palestinian Authority. And they're funded by the United States, their security forces are trained by the United States, et cetera, and they are as dedicated to the annihilation of Israel as Hamas is.
I'm going to ask you to speculate because I can't figure it out. I mean, anyone who literally knows what's happening and has been to Israel, which any of our leaders should have gone there, stood on the heights there in Samaria and looked into Tel Aviv and into the Mediterranean. How do they think that this works?
First of all, I don't think there's a lot of thinking going on here. I think that what you have is a herd mentality where everybody who's everybody knows that you need to get to a two-state solution, and nobody ever is allowed to question that.
Because it sounds good, right?
It sounds like you're fair to everybody. Right. But what you're not doing is you're not standing with your ally. You're standing with people who support the annihilation of your ally, and actually, you know, they were the ones cheering out in the streets and passing out sweets on September 11th.
From our perspective, and I think you would share this, we believe, evangelical Bible-believing Christians, this land was given to the Jewish people. It's not ours to tell you to give it up or anybody else.
You know, even if you take the spiritual aspect out of it, you know, can you imagine the Americans telling the French that they have to quit Paris? I mean, just on that basis, it's appalling. But of course, you know, I mean, why are we there? We're there because we're Jews. Where are Jews from? From Judea. What has been the capital of the Jewish people since time immemorial? Jerusalem.
Right. It's very troubling, but very important that we get this right. Carolyn, always great to see you, and always love having you on the program so that we can keep our viewers and listeners informed as to what's going on.
It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be on your show with you. Thank you, and it's exciting to be here in your studio for the first time.
All right. Well, have a great evening.